subscribe, hit that notification button. Don't forget to share this video with your fellow veterans. Good evening, everyone. My name is Dwayne. I got a video for that Kimball United States Army veteran and retired VA rating specialist. I am super excited tonight. We have a couple of guests joining us this evening, Dr. Carlos Garcia and Dr. Nicholas of Tampa Counseling and Wellness in Tampa Bay, Florida. How we doing, guys? How we doing? And ladies, I'm sorry. How we doing this evening?
Feeling good, man. Good to be here with you.
Hey, Wad, thanks. I know we got a lot to unpack tonight, and I know both of you are busy working with veterans, doing your day-to-day, so I definitely appreciate the both of you taking the time out of your busy schedule to join me tonight. So we're just going to jump right into it. We're going to do some introductions. So Dr. Nicholas, can you tell us a little bit about yourself, what you do, and how you help veterans?
Hi, sure. I am a counseling psychologist, licensed counseling psychologist by profession, and I work with Dr. Garcia at Tampa Counseling and Wellness. We've been working together for a while now, and I had a long career at the VA before meeting Dr. Carlos. I worked at the VA for around 10 years and had the pleasure of working in a PTSD clinic where I was able to help veterans with PTSD and sexual trauma. I also specialized in OCD and anxiety while I was at the VA. And now I do great work at Tampa Counseling and Wellness, doing Nexus letters and DBQs, as well as seeing clients.
Well, thank you. Thank you for that introduction, Dr. Nicholas. And Dr. Garcia, welcome back. It's been a while.
Yeah, it's been a minute, Dwayne. Thanks for having me back. So I'm a clinical psychologist as well. I'm also a Marine Corps veteran. Kind of sandwiched in there in between. I served as a firefighter and paramedic for many years before becoming a psychologist. And I think we're going on almost 4 or 5 years, if I'm not mistaken, Dwayne, of working together, helping veterans who come through our clinic to support them in their VA claims. So it's been such rewarding work. It's great. I almost like on a weekly basis, I get a text message or an email from a veteran that we've helped, feeling super grateful about the assistance we've been able to provide for them. So it's been amazing.
Well, thank you. And I get a lot of comments, and I've shared some of those comments with you that I receive on YouTube, where veterans are saying, "Hey, I work with Tampa Counseling and Wellness. They're awesome." And I think it's been over 5 years. I think it's been over. Yeah, it's probably been since I know May of 2019 or something like that. So, I think we're over that 5-year mark. So to this evening, we're going to be taking some questions. We got the room filling up. We got about 68 people. So everyone, make sure you go ahead and hit that like button. Also, if before I do announce that tonight's discussion is going to be about DBQs, disability benefit questionnaires, mental DBQs, whether it be PTSD, increased PTSD, major depressive disorder, secondary. We're going to get into a little bit of Nexus statements. So make sure when you post your questions, you're asking questions about the DBQs. Now, we may not be able to answer everybody's individual question because it may require some additional questions from myself or Dr. Garcia or Dr. Nicholas. Okay. So before we get into it, before we get into the first question, if you're interested in contacting Tampa Counseling and Wellness throughout tonight's event, the name of the company, but most importantly, the phone number will be on a ticker going across the bottom, 813-520-2807. Want to make sure I got that right. I double checked it, but just wanted to make sure I got it right. All right. So the first question, how can veterans work with your company? Okay. I know you're here in Tampa, but if anyone needs a DBQ, whether it be an increase, claiming a mental condition secondary, or just even treatment, But most importantly, a DBQ, how can someone that's going to see this tonight say, I want to work with Tampa and Counseling and Wellness? What are some of the steps they need to take?
Yeah, so the process is super simple. And for those folks, they'll get thrown off by the Tampa Counseling and Wellness and the fact that we're located in Tampa. Dr. Sarah and I are under something that's called SIPACT, which allows us to see folks in up to 40 states, right? And the VA allows you to get a DBQ or Nexus or a psychological evaluation from somebody outside of your state. That's why we get to work with so many folks. But it's very simple. Like I said, they can just call our office. The numbers is right there. If we don't answer your call, we're usually in the office Mondays through Thursdays from 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. But if we don't answer your call, you can leave a message, and usually the next business day, again, Monday through Thursday, we'll get back to that veteran. And the process is easy. They could either call us or go on our website to learn a little bit more about us and the process, and then just contact us through the website as well. But the process is easy. Once we get that contact information from you and we know that you've reached out, what our assistant will do is send you out an email. That initial sort of questionnaire, if you will, is going to ask a little bit about your case, what you're looking to do, so that we can get familiar with you before we even jump on a quick call with you. And so that's the next step that we do, Dwayne, is we'll jump on a call with you. We'll say, okay, what is it that you're looking to do? What are you currently service connected for? We want to get really familiar with your case so that we know if our office can help you right up front, right? And most of the time we can. From that call, we're going to sort of just give you that confidence of like, hey, look, this is something we can do for you. This is what the process will look like. Set your mind at ease about what the whole, the bigger process is going to look like. After that call, if you want to move forward with us, it's a simple email we send over to you with some documents for you to upload, some documents to fill out from our office, and a link for you to upload some of your documents from the VA, prior disability rating decisions, DD-214, some simple forms like that. And then once they get that all done, our office gets alerted. One of our assistants jumps on a call, schedules you for your interview with one of our psychologists, so that we can go ahead and have a dialogue, a conversation to learn a little bit more in depth about, what potential symptoms are you dealing with, and how we can start to structure your case. Usually from that time, it takes us about maybe 2 weeks at the most to come back and create your DBQ, your Nexus letter, if that's what you need, and then, involve you in the process. We want to sort of feel that veterans are having our support throughout this, right? It's not just a one and done. We don't want to just fill out paperwork for you and send it to you. We really want to guide you through this process as best we can.
Right. Definitely appreciate that, Dr. Garcia. And you pointed out something. I want to make sure veterans heard you. You said that you and Dr. Nicholas are certified in other states. And I know we've had conversations, and I think Dr. Nicholas, we just talked about this about a week ago, where there's a M21 manual referenced where I think a lot of VA employees are giving some misinformation to veterans, saying that their examiner has to be within 100 miles, and that's not the case. Thus the name. I got a video for that, Kimball. I just talked about it on one of my videos where it only states it's a potential indicator of inauthenticity. Potential. Nothing about the examiner has to be within 100 miles. And I often tell my viewers, I'm like, okay, well, there's something called telehealth, telemental, meaning you can do an exam by video. So if you have an individual in Los Angeles and they have been getting treatment with a particular examiner, let's say over 5 years, they move to Miami and they say, hey, I need a DBQ for increase in PTSD or whatever. Nothing in the VA regulation states that, one, that doctor can't do it by secure Zoom, and two, that they have to be within 100 miles. So thank you for clarifying that, Dr. Garcia. I really appreciate it. Dr. Nicholas, this question is for you, and then I'm going to let you chime in after Dr. Garcia. How long have you been completing disability benefit questionnaires and Nexus statements for veterans?
So I've been doing disability Nexus letters and statements for around 3 years. I've been doing assessments and evaluations on veterans for as long as I've been a psychologist, however. So I'm very, very well seasoned in knowing exactly why veterans are struggling the way they're struggling, how to discuss their ailments in a report. It's something that I've been doing for most of my career. And so it was a natural transition for me to do DBQs and to do Nexus letters that I kind of popped right into it. It was almost a no-brainer for me to go from one to the other because I understand the veteran population probably more than I understand my own family, to be quite honest with you. And so I've been doing overall evaluations for around 10 years, but specifically DBQs and Nexus for about 3.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Dr. Nicholas. And now you, Dr. Garcia, I pose that same question to you.
Yeah, so I think it's important to reiterate what Dr. Sarah was saying about doing the psychological evaluations. That's a very sort of important piece here, which is asking the right questions so that we can understand the symptoms that are coming to the surface, so that then we can relate that in document form for the VA. So I've been doing that for about 10 years myself. And then in terms of the DBQs, the Nexus letters, for as long as I've known you, Dwayne, so going on that almost 6-year mark, and I actually went through my records the other day to get a count of how many veterans we've helped, and it's over 200 now.
Wow, really?
Folks that we've helped, yeah. So I was blown away by that. Yeah, pretty impressive. The kind of reach that we've had here in the last handful of years.
Well, they say it's over 18 million veterans, so it's a lot more work.
We got a lot of work to do. Yeah.
A lot more work to be done, right? Okay. So I want both of you to look at your screens because now we are going to look at some comments. I'm trying something new here. As a YouTuber, you want to feel like that producer or something like that. So I got a couple of computers going. So let's just see what some of the people are saying. But first, let me put on my glasses. I'm not 21 anymore. Okay. All right. So we have, boom, nailed it. Dwayne and crew. Awesome. Okay. Tad Bale says, putting together my anxiety personal statement as I watch this. Okay. All right. Okay. Here we go. Jeff Russell, Tampa Counseling and Wellness is great. Okay. Okay. All right. Let's see. Let's keep going here. Dwayne's channel has helped me get to 50% on my own so far. And that's one thing that I tell veterans is, one, you have to invest the time. If you invest the time to put into your claim and get educated, this is something that you could do yourself. With my videos, I'm always sharing the 38 CFR, the M21-1 reference. So I am super excited to hear somebody is investing the time. Got Betty Boots. It's been a while, Betty. Welcome back. Welcome back. I like going through some of these comments. Everybody make sure you hit that like button, but more so, let's get some questions. Okay. Tad Bell said solo using tips from Dwayne's channel. To be honest, 50% is one claim and was a slam dunk, service connected, sleep apnea, had surgery while active and have CPAP, was still a fight though. Yes, it is. It's always a fight with the VA. And I tell people, and they say, well, I shouldn't have to do that. And I'm like, how much time do you put into preparing your taxes? Whether you get in your car, you go to HR Block or one of these other tax agencies, you got to do the same thing with your VA claim. It's a process. Uncle Sam is not going to give this money away easy. Okay. So boom, now they said, cool, I'm doing my BDD, but trying to get spun up on the process. Hopefully, since it's a BDD, everything is service connected. Make sure you get it documented. Document. Okay. So we're going to jump back into some more questions here. The next question is for our new viewers, new to the claims process. Can either you explain the difference between what is a disability benefit questionnaire and a nexus statement? A lot of people will say, hey, I'm filing an increase for my service connected anxiety. And I went out and got a Nexus statement. And I'm like, why? You're already service connected. So can either of you explain the difference between the DBQ, disability benefit questionnaire, and the Nexus statement? You can go first, Dr. Nicholas.
Oh, sure.
Let's go first.
So the main difference between a DBQ and a Nexus statement is that the DBQ is the actual psychological evaluation. It's essentially a report of the psychological evaluation. It's a form that the VA has us as the evaluator fill out after we've done or while we're doing the psychological evaluation, so that we can write down, first and foremost, what are your mental health symptoms? What is your diagnosis? Are there any medical conditions that are tied to your diagnosis that goes into DBQ? And then as evaluators, not only are we going to assess what your symptoms are, but how it's impacting your social and occupational functioning. And so we will, in the evaluation, ask you, how is this impacting your relationships with your friends, your family, your children, and assess your entire social functioning, as well as how is it impacting your ability to work, your ability to go to school. If you're retired, is it impacting your ability to do charity work that you may be to do? Anything that's impacting your occupational functioning. And so with a DBQ, we also provide a Nexus letter, which essentially is tying if you are attempting to help the VA understand how a physical ailment that you may be service connected for is tied to your mental health. For instance, if you are having longstanding back pain and you're struggling to do the things that you used to do, and you're just experiencing chronic pain, that likely has impact on your mental functioning. You're maybe not feeling good enough, feeling like a failure. It can lead to depression, can even lead to anxiety if you're feeling restless about not being able to do the things that you were once able to do. And so the Nexus letter is a specific letter intended for us to be able to highlight how exactly the mental health functioning from the DBQ is tied to that physical ailment. An additional thing that we're also going to highlight in that Nexus letter is, as psychologists, as scientists, how do we understand the research the historical research that links your mental health to that physical ailment? There's lots of research out there, for instance, that indicates that many people who struggle with tinnitus also struggle with major depressive disorder. And as psychologists, we understand that, but it's our job to help the rater understand those connections as well.
And I think that is so key. What you said is going out, doing the research as the professional, and putting that information in front of the rater. And that's something, when I rate it, I always want to see. You know, if you're claiming major depressive disorder secondary to tinnitus, are there any medical studies or medical literature out there that shows a correlation or some type of relationship between the two? So, Dr. Garcia, I'll ask you that same question. I know when you first started seeing some of my clients years ago, we were probably on the phone several Saturdays, like 6 o'clock in the morning, emails going back and forth. And I know I've shared countless M21-1 references with you and Dr. Nicholas as well. So if you could just share a little bit about, I guess, how you've seen DBQs transform from 5 years ago to now, and then also your process, as the DBQ, and you were able to get more information about the VA's guidelines, how you in your office kind of made changes along the way as well.
Yeah, no, thank you for saying that, Dwayne. I think really where you were of such value to our organization as a former rater was helping us understand, like, we can do an outstanding psychological evaluation and speak to the symptoms and write up a Nexus letter. That makes sense from our sort of psychological lens. But we also needed to incorporate some of the CFR and some of what the VA is often looking for in terms of the language, right? So, for example, on the Nexus letter, there's often a statement in there about the probability being over 50% in regards to how these conditions are connected. Another example is raters like to see that the diagnosis that we're using, they like to see that we state that it comes from the Diagnostic and Statistics Manual, the most updated version, right? So there are some critical components that need to be in both that DBQ and Nexus letter, that if you're not working with the right folks that know what that languaging needs to look like, you run the risk of having an outstanding psychological evaluation, a great Nexus letter, but if the verbiage isn't how it needs to be so that that rater understands what's going on, you might miss some components and cause some confusion. And the last thing we want to do is create confusion about your case for anybody who this is coming in front of. Right?
Thank you. Now let's stick on the Nexus statements because I get so many comments from individuals and they just say Nexus statements and they think that's all that they need. And as a former rater, I used to get just Nexus statements, a medical opinion and the Nexus statement, but not the DBQ. And so what I would have to do when that happened was request a CNP exam.
Mm-hmm.
But if I needed a Nexus, I wouldn't request it from the VA or the third-party examiner because I already had the Nexus. But what veterans are seeing now, they're just getting an exam regardless. But also, I've seen some Nexus statements, and some of them veterans show me are either not good, or I've seen some over 20 plus pages long. And the one thing that I was looking for was the rationale. So let's talk about the rationale, because I think it is a key, if not the key important of the entire Nexus statement. And I know both of you have just talked about it, but can you give a little bit more detail as it pertains to the rationale that's in the Nexus statement?
Sure. So I love this question because even within the last week, I've become such a nerd on Nexus statements and how to make the right rationale. Anytime that I do the consultation calls for many of the consultation calls for Tampa Counseling and Wellness, and it breaks my heart when a veteran comes and says, well, I had a Nexus statement, but it wasn't enough. And it's like, well, they didn't even do an evaluation with me. And I'm like, how did they know how your stuff is connected if they didn't do an evaluation with you? And I've even seen out there in the marketplace people charging just for Nexus statements. And at Tampa Counseling and Wellness, we have a true belief that we want to do both because our goal is to set folks up for success. And we're not going to do anything that we know isn't really going to set you up for the most increased likelihood of having the outcome. So if we think we can do it, we're not going to do it. But if we feel that we can really help you, we're going to help you. And so lately with the rationale, for me, it's been, and I really honestly got this philosophy from Dr. Garcia and from you, Dwayne, to be quite honest, is we want to make sure that there is a tight rationale as to how exactly your mental health is connected to that physical ailment. And so first we're going to outline what the physical ailment is and how you're experiencing it. Then we're going to discuss what are the symptoms you're experiencing and how it's specifically connected to that. And personally, in my Nexus letters, I like to just have a bulleted list of like, these are the symptoms that you're experiencing in relation to that physical disability. And then under that, I have the scientific research that states, and our scientific research notes that in addition to the experience that I had with this veteran in being able to connect this is a widely understood thing to be true. And then after that, we want to highlight, because we know this from the evaluation, why the evaluation is so important, is that we can recognize from the evaluation that this is not something that you had going on before you entered the military. And so we're able to outline how this is not something that you had pre-existing in the military, or if it was something that you had pre-existing in the military, how it was exacerbated by your time in the military, so that we can really tie all of that together, so we can say for sure with more than 50% probability that you have a mental health disability in connection with that physical disability.
And that makes total sense. And I'm glad you explained it that way, because when I rate it, even now, veterans, they'll say, and not only with mental conditions, they'll say, well, the VA diagnosed me. And I'm like, okay. Then they don't understand. A lot of veterans think, oh, well, I went to mental health at my local VA medical center. I got diagnosed with PTSD and I filed a claim and I got denied. And they miss everything in between A and Z. And I start asking questions. What is your stressor? Are you claiming it secondary? Are you claiming it on a direct basis? And they're like, what are you talking about? And that's where the evidence comes in, I think, for examiners that are completing these DBQs like yourself, seeing that evidence, knowing, okay, well, what the veteran is claiming, giving them a diagnosis, and if they're claiming it's secondary, what is that correlation? That's what you talked about, Dr. Nicholas. And sometimes veterans, they miss that. They be like, oh, I'm going over here, I'm going over there, and they're just going around searching for a yes and not understanding how all this ties together. So I ask you the same question, Dr. Garcia. What did, in your experience, when it comes to that nexus statement, as a former VA employee, I think it's the most key component is that rationale is explaining. But in your experience over the years that you've been doing this, what do you think the key component is for you when it pertains to the nexus statement?
Yeah, and I'll say even before I get to that, I think one of the things that we do really well is and I encourage any veterans, if they're not sure sort of where they are in the process or how they can get service connected or what's going on, just give us a call. I think one of the things we do really well is sort of guide them and provide them with an understanding of where their case is at and what is the probability moving forward. What's our what is the strongest direction that we can sort of head in order to get their claim service connected. So, just earlier today, I had a couple of phone calls with some veterans around the same question. I have this diagnosis, but what does this mean for, in terms of my disability? And so we can really help sort of guide, in some of that, Dwayne. But to answer your question, I think one of the things that's important for me is the recognition that, like, I went to school to learn how to be a psychologist, how to do a psychological evaluation, how to write a report, right? And I can write an excellent report that Dr. Sarah will understand. And I have no worries that she will get exactly what I'm talking about. But what we try to do is like, okay, when this is in front of a rater who hasn't gone to medical school, who doesn't have a degree in psychology, how do we word it in a way where we're taking the science, we're taking our findings as professionals and wording it in a way that the rater can understand, right? So one of the examples I give, Dwayne, is I know there's some folks out there where the philosophy is, for example, let's sort of service connect your depression, let's say, secondary to all of your service connected medical conditions, your back pain, your shin splints, your tinnitus. Now, that's one approach. And I'm not saying it's right or wrong, but the way I approach it is I want to draw the clearest sort of parallel connection for whoever that rater is that's reading this. I don't want to cause confusion. I don't want him to start having questions or doubts about what our findings are. So for us, it's imperative that we write this in a way that it makes as most sense and is just very straightforward and logical. So that's what we try to do and how we try to execute in those rationales, so that your layperson could read this and be like, oh yeah, it makes sense why this veteran is struggling with this mental health condition, right? That's optimal for us.
Right. Thank you.
And I want to add.
Go ahead, Dr. Nicholas. Go ahead.
I just want to add to that and say that it's so vital to ensure that there is a full understanding of the fact that it is service connected. One of the number one things that I see folks get denials for is the fact that they have the diagnosis, but they don't have proof of any kind of stressor. And so in my consultation calls, one of the number one things I'll say to folks is, hey, I believe you. I'm a psychologist. I'm inclined to believe people when they say they're suffering. However, if you don't have the collateral to prove that this happened, it doesn't matter what I say in an evaluation around your mental health. The fact that I can't say that I looked at any collateral to say that it was service connected is not going to do you any favors. And always encourage folks, make sure you have your stuff together and that you have proof of your in-service connection before you come into a DBQ. And I feel like anybody who, whether you get it with us or anyone else, if someone tells you that they can give you a Nexus letter and a DBQ without any kind of proof of in-service, they're not sending you in the right direction as far as I'm concerned.
Thank you. That's very important. So now we are going to get back into some comments and seeing what people what questions they have. But before we do that, everyone, if you need, we have Tampa Counseling and Wellness contact information going across the bottom in the ticker. But I know somebody's going to say, Dwayne, what is the phone number? And I'm going to be like, it's in the ticker also. In all of the description sections of the videos that I do, at least all the way back to August of last year, if you click on the show more button, their contact information, the website link, and phone number is in the description section of all those videos and this video. Okay. So make sure that you reach out. Also, before I forget, we are going to follow this up with a live Zoom with Dr. Garcia and Dr. Nicholas, okay? Seats are going to be limited. It's going to be 1 hour. It's going to be free, and they're going to be taking more questions in person. Well, by Zoom, of course, okay? So if that's something that you are interested in, go ahead and put a 1 in. Make sure you are subscribed and you hit that notification button, because when we start posting it and I start talking about it, hey, make sure you sign up for this Zoom. You can get your seats because I am going to cap the seating. Okay. So let's look at some of these comments. Let me go back to my glasses. I don't know. I don't feel like I'm getting old, but my eyes are telling me something different. Can you obtain a mental health medical records directly from the VA? Yes. Grace. Grace is a supporter of mine. And sometimes I recognize people's names, but I recognize Grace's names because Grace said, Dwayne, are you going to be snitching tonight? And she always asks me that. I'm like, yes, because she knows I'm going to drop those VA claim nuggets where I'm sharing the 38 CFR and the M21-1. So yes, Grace, I'm snitching. I'm telling it all. You don't have to give me a soda. You don't have to give me no tater chips. I'm letting the cat out of the bag for everybody. So thank you, Grace. But My Healthy Vet is where you can go online and get a copy of your VA medical records, or if you're in your local VA medical center or outpatient clinic or annex, release of information. Okay. Michael says, what is step 5? Michael, I have a video explaining all the steps from step 1 through step 8. I'm 0% for hypertension service connection, but if I die from a heart attack, my family can get DIC. So yeah, 0% is still beneficial. That is correct. Guess what? That's the name. I got a video for that. I have a video where I'm explaining the criteria for DIC. Okay. All right, let's keep going. Yeah, I'm learning now. Want to get as far as I can on my first try instead of having to do a bunch of tries. It's crazy because I tell people when I was a rater, I was to say adjudicating. I wasn't, actually rating my own claim, but representing myself. It took over 5 years, and this process, I think, over the years has gotten harder. Okay. Because when I first started, it wasn't any DBQs. It wasn't all this information out there on the website. None of that stuff. Now it is. And then when DBQs came out, I had a hard time finding somebody that would even do a DBQ. And back then, they were really short. I think the initial PTSD, the mental health DBQs are like 6 pages. Now I think it's maybe up to 12. Okay. Going through some of these questions. Seems like everybody's talking to each other. We have 2, not 1, 2 examiners that do mental health DBQs and Nexus statements, and you all are not asking any questions. But I guarantee you, tomorrow they can be like, Dwayne, well, what about this? I'm like, you had the 2 individuals on here last night. Okay. I'm just trying to go through. I don't want to, it seems like T Bell is kind of taking over here, going back and forth to questions. Okay. Here we go. Here we go. Thank you, Dr. Garcia. Helped me out a lot on what I needed. Here's the reason I got my 100% permanent and total. Michael, definitely congrats. Thank you for sharing that. And the work that Tampa Counseling and Wellness is doing, it's just it's awesome. And I was, Dr. Garcia, when I reached out to someone, a mutual person that we know, I was nervous. I was like, I knew I wanted to ask him, about doing DBQs for individuals. I was like, I don't know him. I haven't talked to him before. What if he says no? And you said yes. And so this is just a testament here of the good things that you're doing. So thank you, Mr. Anthony, for sharing. Okay. Dwayne, got to claim that bad eyesight, brother. It's crazy because I'm probably on the computer all the time, right? It's probably on the computer. Okay, so we got somebody in from Mississippi. Okay, this is one of my members here, YouTube members. Good evening. We're going to take one more comment here. Ryan, service connected for adjustment disorder, file for PTSD. Woo, need information on TDIU. This is not going good. Been struggling in the workforce for years. I've worked countless jobs. Okay, real quick, Ryan. If you are service connected for adjustment disorder, okay, and you said you filed a claim for PTSD, mental is mental. The VA is going to take that as a claim for increase. Okay. Now, you threw IU in there. IU is not standalone claim. IU is a claim for increase for the service connected, not non-service connected, but the service connected condition that you state prevent you from gainful employment. So you have to understand, one, you're already service connected for adjustment disorder. Now you're saying PTSD. It can change. The diagnosis can change, but the examiner has to explain if it is a progression. Okay. And I don't want to put Dr. Garcia or Dr. Nicholas on the spot here, but have either of you come across a time where a veteran came in and the diagnosis changed and you had to use that verbiage progression? I know that wasn't a question on the list, but I didn't know if you all have had that before, because as a rater, if a veteran, in this case, service connected for adjustment disorder, comes in for the increase and it changes to, let's say, major depressive disorder. Have you all seen that and had to use that verbiage as it pertains to progression?
Yeah, I mean, I know that we talked about this. This was like one of those things you and I went back and forth on a bit, Dwayne. I think one of the things that can maybe help veterans understand what's going on here, when it comes to mental health, it's a little bit different than a medical condition, right? A lot of medical conditions, we can draw some blood work, we can do some diagnostic labs that can tell us like you have, diabetes or, whatever the condition, high blood pressure, right? With mental health disorders, it's a little bit more complex. We don't have those kinds of tests. So often it's based on a series of symptoms that are being experienced at any given time. The other thing is that those pattern of symptoms can be different at different times. And a lot of them may overlap. So that's one piece. The other piece, Dwayne, is because there is this, right, it's less black and white than it is in the medical field. We might often see somebody come to us with some previous diagnosis that may or may not be accurate from another provider, right? And so we need to take all of that into consideration. So sometimes a veteran will come in and say, well, I've been given this bipolar disorder. I just had one of these veterans today. I have this bipolar disorder, but as I did further and further investigating with my own psychological evaluation, I realized that diagnosis wasn't correct, but here it was already on their VA records, right? So that's somewhere where we have to come in and say, well, like, this is the diagnosis I'm giving them. Here's the reason why. And then help the VA understand that this is a progression, like you said, and not a different diagnosis.
Right. Thank you for pointing that out, because I saw this Ryan, and then he went into PTSD. And as a rater, I've seen veterans come in at 70% for major depressive disorder, and they think that, oh, well, the VA is going to give me another 70% for PTSD, and that is not the case in veterans. That is called pyramiding. Guess what? I got a video on pyramiding. Okay, got a video on that. So let's get to the next question here. Everybody, I saw a lot of ones about the Zoom, so that is coming. I'm going to work with Dr. Garcia and Dr. Nicholas to get that schedule. Again, we're going to cap it because it's only going to be 1 hour, and there's only a certain amount of questions that we can take during that time. But go ahead. We have 179 people joining in tonight. Okay, it's about average. Someone let me know how many likes that we have. Also, put a fire emoji if you think Dr. Garcia and Dr. Nicholas is spitting fire tonight. Okay, so let's go ahead and get to our next question. What common misconceptions do veterans have about the Nexus letter process, and how do you address them with the particular veteran? And I'm pretty sure we probably touched on this because the last few questions have been on Nexus letters. But what is the common misconception as it pertains to Nexus letters?
I think probably the most common misconception is we've discussed it, is that you only need a Nexus letter. And I think the second one is if you're getting an increase, that you need a Nexus letter for an increase. Usually, just as an additional, we usually put an addendum just to further explain our medical opinion to go along with the DBQs. I think those are probably the two most common misconceptions that I see.
Okay. Do you have any, Dr. Garcia?
No, I think it's pretty much those two, what we see. Pretty sure.
Okay. Yeah. And I agree. So as as a former raider, veterans just thinking, hey, that's all I need, especially if it's for the increase, and that's where, again, when I've did classes, years ago, where I talked about what makes a DBQ and Nexus statement actionable and sufficient. And you all covered that tonight, just making sure that all the information, all the boxes are checked, and all the information is there that the VA needs. And so thank you for sharing that, because I'm like veterans. I talked to one gentleman, I think it was a back condition, and had a 10-minute conversation. And after 5 minutes, I was like, wait a minute. You're doing an increase. So you went out and you paid for a Nexus. They gave you a Nexus. Where's the DBQ? Well, that's all they gave me. So then the veteran goes back. It was like, hey, I need a DBQ, not the Nexus. And they said, well, hey, that's what you told us you wanted. And that's what we did. And then they were going to turn around and charge him to do the DBQ. And it was, it was a godly, I don't want to say ungodly, but it was a crazy amount that he did end up paying for the DBQ. But after it was all said and done, it was a lot of money. So it's very important for veterans to understand.
If I can say one thing here.
Go ahead, Dr. Garcia.
Yeah. I think one thing that's different now for veterans is there is a lot of information out there, right? YouTube channels, folks that are, and I think that's great, right? But one of the things I notice sometimes is, like, I'll have some veterans question our Nexus letter, like, should this be it? Or I heard that this should be in there. And so that's where we sort of try to educate them in terms of why our office does them the way that they do them. But I think the thing I want to share here is just, like, be mindful of where you're getting your information. So sometimes folks will call and, like I said, before we work together, I want you to check out Dwayne Kimball on YouTube, look at some of his videos so that you can get some understanding of why it is we do the things that we do, because they'll come hearing information from somewhere else that sometimes isn't accurate. And then, they'll be upset about, well, why isn't this in my Nexus letter? And we'll just kindly sort of help them understand our rationale and why we do things the way that we do.
Right. And I think that's you hit on a key point, because one thing I like to do when I'm talking about a particular topic, like what I talked about earlier about the 100 miles, I share slides and I tell individuals I take the time to do the research to go out to the 38 CFR, the M21-1 and see what's what. And then try to put it into perspective, because I used to do videos, it was like 27 minutes. I'm like, I didn't talk about everything. And I was like, okay, let me just shorten it, because a lot of people weren't looking at the entire video. So I'm like, okay, let me shorten it down to 10 or 12 minutes. And one thing about the VA, those references, they change from time to time. Okay. They change. And it's like, you have to go out there, you look at these changes, keep up with them, because that means something that you're doing with your claim, or maybe what you're asking a particular examiner could do could change or be different, you know? So I always like to say, hey, if I'm showing a slide, it's not me saying it, it's the VA saying it. I'm just relaying that particular information. Okay. So let's get back to, go ahead, Dr. Nicholas.
I want to say one, and we've talked about this, Dwayne, and I think it's an important misconception to really emphasize, is I think sometimes a lot of veterans wait until they get their C file in order to go and try to get their DBQ done. And I think it's good to have your C file if you can get it. We certainly like to see it if we can see it. But for private practitioners like Tampa Counseling and Wellness, we're actually not required to look over your entire C file. Right. We are not required. If you go for a comp and pen examination, the VA, someone who is contracted through the VA, is required to look over all of that. But we're not. And I put those in my next statement, just in case the rater does not know that we don't have to look at it. Now I put that in my Nexus statements just to remind them that we don't have to do that. And so if you don't have your C file, still give us a call so that we can see if you have enough information to get your claim started.
And I'm glad you brought that up, because I think I can't remember, maybe a week ago or two, I sent you that M21 manual reference, because a lot of VA employees, they think that, you know, and one thing that I tell veterans, I'm like, hey, when I used to get evidence, especially coming from a private provider, and they had a 38 CFR or M21 reference in it, and I didn't recognize it, I would go and look. And I'm like, wait a minute, how does this vet know about this reference? And I was like, wow. I'm like, okay, I can use this. So I thank you for just going that extra mile and putting that information in there for raters. And I think it's good for veterans as well, because if something happens or that rater decides, hey, I'm not going to use this because the doctor said they didn't look at any evidence, or, you know, the VA claims file, they can now in turn use that manual reference on their appeal. Mm-hmm. That's the argument. And you point out, because in the reference, it's in black and white saying, hey, private examiners are not held to the same standards when it comes to reviewing evidence. Now, I always tell veterans, you saw my claims file. They like, how did you get that? I still have orders taking me to basic training back when I was in high school in 87. Probably showing my age there a little bit. Never needed them since then. But when it comes to this claims process, you just never know. So I always kept everything that I submitted to the VA, and I kept everything that the VA submitted to me. And back then it was easy to get, you know, exams, because you just go to release of information, wait in a long line, and then you would get it. So we have a couple of questions, but we're going to get to some more comments, and I am going to go to some of our donations this evening. Okay. I do apologize. Got to go back to the specs again. So C. Blair said, just a small thank you for the nuggets. And everyone, guess what? I am introducing someone to my YouTube channel, and his name is VA Nugget Man. Okay, so be on the lookout for that. He is coming to a KMD 89 YouTube video near you soon. Okay, So we got Jeff Russell. Hey, Jeff, thank you for becoming a member. Also, if you are a premium member in the membership, I go live just for the premium members the third Thursday of every month. Boom, nailed it. Newbie here. All right. I could tell that newbie, boom, he was in the comment section all night tonight. What is the difference between the vet center and Tampa Counseling and Wellness? Not so much mental health services, but do they work together or separate functions? The first questions, we're 50 minutes in the first question. So the vet center. Well, first, I know Dr. Nicholas, you worked on the VHA side a little bit. You are familiar with vet centers, correct?
Mhm.
So can you explain the difference between a VA vet center, which I think I can do it, but I'm not going to steal your thunder, and Tampa Counseling and Wellness?
Sure. So the vet center is affiliated with the VA. And so the vet center is a place where folks who I believe have either been in a combat level situation or who have MST can go to a vet center. It's this place specifically for them. It's usually the counselors and there are veterans themselves. And they're usually smaller than a VA, a little bit more intimate than a VA, but they are associated directly with the VA. And I don't believe, please don't quote me on this, but I don't believe that they do comp and pens or anything like that at vet centers. It's specifically for therapy. Now, Tampa Counseling and Wellness, we're a private entity. So we are a private practice. We're a solo practice, which is owned by Dr. Garcia and myself. And so we are not affiliated with the VA in any way. While we are affiliated with veterans in many ways, we are not affiliated with the VA in any specific way.
Okay, thank you for sharing that. Okay, our next donation, Annette Baker. She's coming in from the Grand Canyon State. It's been a while. I haven't seen you. Okay, so I'm gonna call you out on that. Hope all is well out there in the Grand Canyon State. Okay, so we got Alex here. Alex, let me put my glasses back on. I do apologize. 70% for PTSD, heart scarring, and VTAC served on USS Bush in Southwest Asia, exposed to jet fuel, and birthing on Bush 24/7. Can I do heart secondary to PTSD or file a PACT Act or exposure? Well, Alex, if you're saying it's due to the issues while you were in service, that could fall on a direct service connection. But if it's not a link there or you weren't treated for it, you could file it under, I would say, TERA, TERA. And guess what, Alex? You are in luck because I have done a video on TERA, toxic exposure. Okay. So I've heard this recently from other Navy veterans where they said that they would, I really don't understand it. So we have any Navy vets leave a comment, but they were saying that the way that they would transfer fuel from the supply ship to the main ship, they would use the same lines to transfer water. And that just really doesn't make sense, but I could be wrong. I'm not Navy, don't understand that protocol. Okay. So we're almost about 6 minutes out. And I'm going to go through some more comments here, just to see if we have any additional comments for our panelists here. Felix says the VA will only diagnose you for PTSD, but to service connect you for PTSD, you need a stress event in service. That is correct. I did a video and I'm thinking about doing another one where it pertains to stressors. And people need to understand you could either have a stressor or a marker as it pertains to PTSD. So, for example, stressor, you have a combat, non-combat. If on your DD-214 shows you were served in Iraq, Afghanistan, Djibouti, somewhere in Southwest Asia, you can claim PTSD due to fear of hostile military terrorist activity. Okay. Now, non-combat, You saw someone get killed. You were in the Pentagon during 9/11. You were Coast Guard and you were retrieving bodies during Hurricane Katrina in New Orleans. Okay. Markers. You see markers more so with MST, military sexual trauma. Okay. I was working a case one time and a young lady said she was sexually assaulted in Iraq. Didn't report it, but she had a copy of her medical records from active duty. And 2 weeks after the event, she went on sick call for lower abdominal pain. And I asked her, I said, hey, was it traumatic? Why did you go on sick call? That's what she explained. She worded it that way. The VA conceded it. She got a CNP exam and she was awarded 70% for PTSD due to military sexual trauma. So that's an example of a marker. Another marker, veteran gets sexually harassed and gets an Article 15 because their performance went down. Okay. They had or get a bad counseling statement. Maybe they told a priest or a friend, and a friend could write a lay statement. The threshold is not that high when it comes to military sexual trauma. Okay. Thank you, Alex. So as we, oh, wait a minute. I think we got something else here from, okay, boom, nailed it. Okay. Says, should we go to Tampa Counseling and Wellness if we're doing a BDD or wait until we get results, then come to Tampa Counseling and Wellness if favorable results are not favorable? Thank you guys for the help. So what Boom Nailed It is talking about BDD, benefits delivery discharge. So it lets me know he or she is on active duty.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And one thing that I tell active duty service members, you're in a great spot. You're in a spot where a lot of veterans wish they could go back to. You can actually go to your mental health facility and get treatment, get it documented. Okay. A lot of veterans think, oh, my active duty, I got to go out and spend money on a DBQ and Nexus statement. And that's not true. Document, document, document. Even if you go to a private physician, off post, off base, make sure you get a copy of that, because then you can submit that with your claim and it is a part of your medical records because you are on active duty. So be nailed it. Make sure you get it documented. Now, let's just say you get 50% for PTSD and you're no longer on active duty and you feel that condition has gotten worse, then that's when you will go to Tampa Counseling and Wellness, do all the things that they just talked about tonight, and they can get a DBQ for you. So as we wrap up, I am going to give final words to Dr. Nicholas and Dr. Garcia. So everybody, before we get into that, again, put fire emojis. I want to see a bunch of fire emojis and thank yous in the comment section to Dr. Nicholas and Dr. Garcia, but I'll give you the first of the last words, Dr. Nicholas.
I would say, again, if you are wondering if you are eligible for service connection for your mental health, give us a call. You're going to get a very personalized touch through TCW. You're literally going to hear when you phone call back, it's literally going to be me or Dr. Garcia that's going to call you back. And we can help you talk through it to see if it's a good idea. And we pride ourselves on making sure that if you come to us, we're going to take care of you in the best way possible, whether that's telling you what additional collateral you need to get if you're in a good position, or if we think it's a good idea for you to move through the process. I just want to thank everyone that's been here tonight for giving us your ear, giving us your time, giving your attention. We do this for you. It's why we're here. We believe that this is our calling to help you. And so thank you for allowing us to help you. I think that's the most important thing that I want to say.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Now I'll turn it over to you, Dr. Garcia.
Yeah, I think what I'd say that sometimes goes sort of unnoticed or unsaid, Dwayne, is, the relationship that you're going to have with us and how you're going to be treated. We know that sometimes at the VA, the encounters aren't always the most empathic and the kindest, and there's reasons for that. But a lot of the times that I have veterans reach out, it's not because we helped them get a higher percentage, is because of how they felt coming in and talking to us. Countless times I've had a veteran who has said to me by the end of the hour of our evaluation, like, "Hey, thanks, doc. I haven't said that to somebody in over 20 years. And this felt like a safe place to come and talk about that. So, wow, I haven't experienced anything like that." So to just kind of keep that in mind, like, our passion for working with veterans is going to come through from that phone call until, the very end of the process. So, we're here to earn your trust and to help you get to where you need to be. So, just a quick reminder about that.
Thank you. Thank you. And I'm saying, I don't know if you all can see on your screens, we got a lot of fire emojis, a lot of thank yous. Grace, you did snitch on the Navy, and yes, they do pump water through those fuel lines. So I didn't snitch on the Navy, but Grace did. So before we wrap up, we did get a couple more donations here. So I always like to make sure I get these questions. If you never had a diagnosis before the military and you get diagnosed in the service, is it automatic? No. I've actually seen veterans get treatment, go through the claims process, and the examiner says no. But the most important thing is get a copy of that C&P exam. And what we talked about earlier, in the Nexus statement, there is a rationale. So when the examiner gives you, the VA examiner provides a negative opinion in the Nexus statement, they have to provide a rationale. And if it's less, L-E-S-S, less likely than not, then make sure you read that rationale as to why they said no. Okay. OJ, VA diagnosed PTSD after the claim was denied. Recently, major depressive disorder rated as secondary condition. Can a supplemental be used to reclassify PTSD as primary condition? You might want to second guess that, OJ, because mental is mental. Okay. Whether you're rated 70% for major depressive disorder or 70% for PTSD, it's the same. But if, I've seen veterans say, no, I want that PTSD. So then it comes into play when it talks about that progression. Okay. But if you're service connected, there's a lot of other things to consider, because if that 70% has been in effect less than 5 years and you go in and try to get that switched and it shows improvement, they can reduce you. Okay. If it's been more than 5 years, they need 2 exams. Don't worry about it, OJ. Dust the name. I got a video on that. I actually have a video on that. Okay. So thank everyone for joining in tonight. We're going to go ahead and we're going to wrap it up. So light the comment section up, put more fire, more emojis. Thank you. Be on the lookout again for that live Zoom with Dr. Garcia and Dr. Nicholas. I am going to limit the seating for that. Okay. And we're going to do it by Zoom, and you can ask your mental health questions live. That being said, make sure you hit that like, subscribe, and notification button. Thank you, and good night.